Are men and women the same? It's a insanely difficult question. Not because of the actual mechanics of the question. Of course, we can figure out. We put a woman here, we put a man there. Are they the same? I think it'd be quite easy to figure that out. It's the questions that arise when you contrast them. Questions like, are they equal? Are they meant to play the same roles? Can they possibly have the same roles? And it's not clear from 2,000 years ago, even before them, even until now. This question is. It made me think a lot about the role of women and about what women are and like why women are who they are, why God made women, why women have a certain sort of place in society, how women are looked at, how women look at themselves and each other, how women affect status hierarchies and resources, and how men and women interact, how do men attract women, why do men want to attract women in the first place. And this topic of women is such a big pervasive things in our lives, that I've always wanted to discover and just like to learn from like the scientific evolutionary psychological views about what women are, to like what the Bible says, to what Muslims say, to what spiritually what their place is in this world, in our lives. And I've read a lot of books, and I'm looking at them now, and there's a lot of ebooks on my iPad as well. And I wanted to just make a video talking about everything I could possibly find about around women, and just like my current understanding about what they are and what kind of roles they play. And I hope that if you stick around to listen to this video, that you begin to not only maybe have some insight into life that you can apply, interact with women or interact with other peers in a way that is you see beneficial, but also have an appreciation for who they are, to what God has wanted them to be, and to what our world looks like today. And I just want to start with this. Simone de Beauvoir, I've been learning French for 7 years. I should not have butchered that, but de Beauvoir said, as a woman, she studies art, and a lot of poets have created a sort of role for what women are. And there was another French poet who said, women are nothing without their husbands. But the idea that one of the poets that Simone de Beauvoir really got attached to and wrote about is this idea that women are humans, and they have their own struggles, their own internal like outward struggles and internal struggles, but uncanniness and contrast to themselves which make them human, just like how man does. In a literature you might see certain conflicts that define the type of conflict that's in a piece of literature, like man versus wild, man versus man. And this character is not necessarily male in sex. It's this female, a female can embody this man in a character, in a story, in a conflict, because they are themselves a human being. It's just there's biology, there's psychology, there's the obvious, like, in your face fact that women are the sole species that can bring forth life into this world. Without women, this is not, like, reproduction is simply not possible. Of course, without men, reproduction is also not possible, but it is the woman who bears the child, the womb, the woman. And so, despite all these differences, women they're still man. A woman is man, complete with their own characteristics, with their own personality, with intellect, with curiosity, with consciousness, and not simply, how a golden retriever, a golden doodle would act. And so, this is the idea that I want to start with. Like, it's so full of life. It's so full of hope. Because I even researched into these different communities, incel communities, and communities like these are inherently gatekept from the outside because the men will say hurt themselves to women trying to relate with their situation. You do not have the earthly experience that I'm experiencing, therefore you cannot be in this community. We cannot we don't see the possibility of you relating to the fact that we will not be able to enter the sexual embrace. And that's I think one topic I want to enter right away. Of course, this, and talking about sex and relationships will open up that field, which I'll go toward in a big chunk of the video. But before I get there, I mentioned these incel communities because they believe that the woman having a completely different life experience, which they do, the mind thinks differently depending on what gender you are, but they still are human, and they are not non-human. They are not above man, which is, I mean, from their perspective, incel's perspective, when a woman can seemingly get whatever she wants, like how are they supposed to feel about fairness and equality? This society is so, it still is, but recently, like past 20 years or so, it's very, very centered on equality in the social sphere, especially in the West. Like, it is the utmost importance that women are able to earn the same as men. They are able to do whatever a man can. I heard this really interesting line from Chris Williamson podcast that kind of explains it well. A daughter is told to work like her father and to like her brother. And if you're not listening to the video, it's to pretty much sleep around as like her brother. And so what women kind of like face they enter this world, and this is like the sort of liberation that the ultimate goal that they're faced with, and then they're told to to chase after. And it's I don't think that's what their hearts truly want. So I'm gonna tell you this interesting topic that I read in my research from a Substack. And so this kind of relates back to the incel thing, where incels will look and say, females can go up to almost any man and say, like, I like you, come to bed with me. And most men will say yes. And they don't see that as fair. But the kind of inherent horniness that men have, there is a different yet similar longing that women have. Of course, it's not for all women, but I think general word for it would be neediness. Women long to be, both men and women long to be intimate. And for men, that intimacy looks like physical intimacy. But for women, that intimacy is to be seen, but not just physically, to be known by the mind. And so, like, the Bible says, the first couple, and Adam and Eve, right? And it says, and Adam knew his wife. And so if you, as a guy reading that, then you're like, oh yeah, they slept together. But there's so much more into knowing your wife. Because knowing is knowing her feelings, which is what's really important to women. They know that they are safe, and that they are protected, and that they are completely loved by their husbands, by men. And that is, I don't know, like maybe for me that sounds a lot more difficult because there's so much more investment in that rather than just the physical intimacy part. But intimacy is both, especially in a romantic relationship. Intimacy is both. And for women, their their longing, like horniness, is not necessarily, and don't get it twisted. Men, I mean, women can be absolute beasts in terms of like the the physical intimacy side, but before anything else, they want to be known, they want to be seen. And so like this is why women are the way they are. And this is like, I think one of the I think this is one of the I don't know for sure, but this feels like one of the core fundamentals into understanding um like how women think. And I think this is one of the core fundamentals actually into discovering how women interact with other women, how women think about resources, why women decide to climb the ladder financially. And I'll go into explaining all these things, but this is like this was a pretty big revelation for me. Of course, I think it's something we all know on some level subconsciously, but this is like if you just take a moment to think about it, like wow, it's one of your jobs as either a boyfriend or if you're single or whatever, even if it's women just that you've never known that you're talking with the first time, the way you interact with them and you have this thing in their mind where their longing in their heart is to be seen. Maybe maybe like in not in that sort of way, but in that just like a gentle way, as if you were a doctor and they were your patient, or if you were a colleague and they were needing help, to look at them in love, not in the wrong ways, but in the ways that they are seen. And one of the things that I've read is that addressing arguments can be sort of boiled down in this light, because the most I think most girls like insecurity, or the reason they're lit aflame with anger or whatnot is that they're not feeling secure or loved or seen in that moment. A common example I see is, taking out the trash. Or if you are lazy around the TV and they start arguing, they're like, oh, you're like this, or you're lazy, you're like, go take out the trash, please, I've told you so many times, and you don't do it. There's I think there's a feeling in their heart where they're not being taken care of and they're not being secure. And they also, a big one is not feeling appreciated by their husbands. And for guys, we are very like problem solving oriented. We're very like record keepers. Like we're huge record keepers. And this is something I've seen as a theme across like many books I've read, but not something I understood until recently. Like even the way, like if I and a girl, or if you're a guy and you interact with a girl might be telling you about her day, and then she'll be saying like, oh, this Julie girl, she did something so bad to me, and then Julie must have done X, Y, and Z, and then you'll be like, oh, you should do this. But that's not necessarily like, it's not incorrect, because you're talking to a guy, like you're trying to solve a problem. That's like the clearly, like you're thinking, oh, she's angry, let me fix her problem and she won't be angry anymore. But she wants to feel seen, she wants to feel known, she wants to have like, I don't like the word validated because I feel like the way it's used nowadays is like kind of weird, but she wants to feel validated in her emotions and the way she's being seen and the way she's being felt. And so like the way that some author suggests you make her feel better in that moment, the best thing you can do for her is to listen, to be actually curious and to know more about the situation. How did Julie make you feel? Or like, tell me more, just like tell me more about it. And then you eventually just keep letting her talk and talk and talk until she says, man, I feel so much better, thanks for listening to me out. This is a skill that I'm still working on, because it's very difficult to figure out, like, and in the meta sense, like, I know I should be talking less and listening more, but when they stop talking and they're like, I'm meant to fill in the gap, I'm so like, my default setting is to like not necessarily problem solve, but to input my own whatever into the situation. But I mean the best like thing to say, like I said, is to reiterate and like, oh, so if I understood correctly, right? Julie did X, Y, and Z, and it made you feel this way. And then after that, she did this. She told this to her friends, and just like listen to the whole thing is like, that's like like one of the fundamental differences that I think is very, very cool into like how women operate mentally. And so, since we are talking about, arguments in relationships, a couple things that I learned about like pursuing women. It's a big topic. I mean, one of the fundamental things I think about is like, in today's world, men, just not my age, but many, many times my age, are not really taught well how to interact with a woman. And it's no one's fault of anyone's. But like, it's not like nowadays there's the best examples of loving couples. Like, it's not like you have a house with like two teenagers and then the mother and father are still twirling each other around and like kissing each other and like talking to each other lovingly, or it's so difficult to, and it's not necessarily that it is I mean, marriage is a struggle and it is hard work and you have to put in, but it's not usual. Like, for example, let's say everyone is trying to break the world record for running a mile, and no one's ever done it below 4 minutes. But as soon as everyone watches one kid do it under 4 minutes, within 2 weeks you have like half the team, like, or half the people being able to do the same thing as well. Because they just need to see that it's possible, and they just need to see they just need to see that it's a thing that someone can have, like children. Let's say you move to a city where it's full of young people, but everyone is focused on their careers and no one's having children. Like, you forget that having children is a thing. It's like, that's a thing you can have. What? And then people, like, it kind of cycles on itself, and people have fewer children. So in terms of like education, I mean, what can men do in terms of education, right? I think like the fundamental things that men should know about women. I mean, it's interesting. There's this author. I think his name is Gary Gray. What's his name? John Gray, PhD. And so he wrote a relationship book back in the 90s, and then 20 years later he wrote a continuation of the book, saying in the prologue, yo, I didn't expect to have to do this, but it turns out dating has changed in the modern age with like things like the internet, with things like birth control. And then he had to rewrite the script, and like rewrite the situations, like the analogies and the situation, the examples. And I mean, of course, all these external things can change, and people like have different problems. But women, like the core of women, don't change. The Bible have stories of women in leadership and power, and today we have the same situation, but of course the laws are different, the society is different, the expectations are different, and people feel underprepared, they feel like uneducated. I mean, and they are, because a good question that I came across is, how many good examples of good, like, how many examples of good relationships do you have in real life around you? And when I really sat down to think of it, like, no one, like, there's no married couple I know in my life who I really look up to. Only on the internet, and I'll let you in on it. I think PewDiePie's relationship and his life situation is something to look up to and something to strive for. Of course, that's something that's posted online, so it's not really um it's not invalid, but you're missing a lot of the struggle that happens off camera, and that shouldn't be on the internet, honestly, because of the nature of the internet. But if there is something that comes close, it's that. um and the kind of relationship I hope to have in the future is something that where love pervades, where punishment is not expected. Like, let me actually dig into this one. I know we're talking about women here, but just real quick. The kind of home I want is to lead by example, and without what's that word where you say one thing but you don't do it, and to really showcase love to my kids, with my wife, with the people around me. And I feel like this is something that, like, I always kind of think to myself, if I'm not able to do it with my own family right now, like, for example, if you cannot have happiness as you're watching this video, or as when you finish, or when you go down to to bed at night, or as you wake up tomorrow to do work, if you're not feeling happiness in the time you're living in right now, there's really no guarantee that you'll have happiness in the far future. It's no matter how high up the ladder you go, the grind never ends. Truly, genuinely, and there'll always be some situation, there'll always be some deadline, there'll always be some project that you're working toward. Unless you give yourself the peace to chill out, unless you allow yourself the happiness, the grind never ends, and there's always be something. But the reason I mention is because I feel like I'm not able to exemplify these values now. So hopefully, and as I continue to develop as a person, that I'm able to exemplify these loving values, so that when I do get in a relationship, that I'm able to carry out these goals of mine. But in terms, like, all of that to say, like, there's not a lot of good examples for men to follow on how to live, how to treat women. Especially, yeah, that's the important part. How to treat women, how to pursue women, how to talk with them. And of course, like, this was pretty funny. On a lot of, like, the Christian circles on the internet, they'll be like, speak with their father, and like talk with her father. It is a bit of a tricky situation, because what happens if you pursue a girl through her father, the father will simply take the girl, assign her a room, and then, the father will say, okay, this boy wants to date you. And then she'll either, like, be like ecstatic with joy, like jumping on the bed, like running around in circles, like and be like, yes, yes, daddy, yes. Or she'll say, like, oh no, no. And then, like, the dad will come to you and he'll say, like, I won't allow you to date my daughter. And it's just kind of like the whole situation is just so weird. And then isn't it so much more like, of course that's correct, right? It's good. It is such a, it's such a, like, a mature and an innocent way of doing these things, which is like, it's good. But I like the sentiment of having the parents involved, but I don't like the sentiment of just, like, I don't like being, like, behind the door of, like, the communication between the dad and I. Like, the daughter and I are being blocked through this communication of the father. It's just a very weird situation to be in. I'd much rather live my life, meet people who I meet, and then if I do decide to pursue a person, just like, hey, can I have your dad's phone number, your mom's phone number? I want to take him out to dinner. And I feel like that asking the permission after knowing she already enjoys your company is, because then you know in your heart, like, it's not like you're chasing someone whose heart is, like, not that interested in you. If someone's interest in you is below 51%, it's so much harder to convince them to pursue. Like, why would you want to do that to yourself? Wouldn't you imagine this? You go to work or you go to wherever. Let's say you're on a conference, and you sit down, and then someone taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, what's your name?" And then you tell them, and you ask, you think this person's interesting, so you're like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And then she yaps, and then she's like, she just wants to keep talking to you. And then you go to sit down for lunch, she finds you, and then she sits down next to you. And then you like keep talking, like you're talking about movies, you're talking about like Bitcoin or whatever. And then the next day she finds you again, and then she sits down to you, and then she like you meet all her friends or whatever friends she made there. And then like she asks you like, "Okay, so like can I have your contact info?" Or like something like that. And then or like she says, "Okay, when are you gonna ask me for my Instagram?" Or something like that. Or she'll give you hints. Of course, these hints, like the extent of these hints, is not something that is like of the nature of this video to like give advice on like what is this things. But anyway, the point is they're making it so easy. Like their interest level is so high into you. Like all you have to do is just continue to entertain her if you do like her, and then just like treat her with respect and kindness and like attention, and of course that intimacy of allowing her to be seen by you. And that is of course not everyone can do that realistically, but best case scenario, isn't that something you'd prefer rather than to see a girl, have like maybe 1 to 15 conversation with her, find out who her dad is, then go ask the dad like, "Hey, I like your daughter, can I?" And she's like has no idea that you like her. And this is another thing, a difference between men and women, a very important one, where interest level will be completely misunderstood between men and women, where a man will be friends or have many conversations with a woman and think, "I'm really interested in her, she must be really interested in me." On the other side of the spectrum, which is really sad, women will have conversations with guys and think, "Oh, he's just a friend. Like we're not into each other like that," and he knows that, mistakenly thinking that, "Oh, he is not into me," but most of the chance, like most of the time, he is into her, which is it's so funny. I haven't figured out why that is the case. I just think it's in the nature of women to be friendly. um I think I wanted to diverge from relationships to go into this one interesting point about the way women talk, right? So we know that men, in terms of defenses, are physically built well. The Bible even says, "Husbands, protect your wives," aka the weaker vessel. I mean, it doesn't say aka, but they are the weaker vessel. Biologically, it's clear. And women are built with a higher emotional and maybe intellectual, but mostly emotional intelligence to defend themselves. And everyone is fighting for resources, right? Whether you're a village chief, whether you're slave daughter, whatever the case, like a good life is built off of how much resources you have. And so this is where the idea of power comes from. If you have reputation, a good reputation, that's fueled by the fact that you have connections to powerful people. And why is that important? Because they have money, or they have, they can get your grandma from Mexico to the United States without immigration, whatever. Like that's power. Like they have things you want and they have things you need, like food. Like if it's extremely rudimentary, it's like access to the river. That gives you status. That gives you power. Another thing is health. Health is what makes someone beautiful. And in my extreme opinion, anyone can be attractive if they are physically healthy. If they take care of the bodies, more specifically, work out and eat right, they can be attractive. And of course, there is genetic disparity in like how smart a person can get or how tall a person can get. But I genuinely think that you can't be ugly, especially if you have like this crippling neurological like disorder. You you can't be unattractive if you eat right and you physically unattractive if you eat right and you exercise. But health is an indicator of power because you're able to live long lives. If you're a girl, you have the ability to have children, multiple children, live through the childbearing process, and of course, birth the child, and take care of the children as you age. Because when you become 45, 50, you may not be sexually active, but you will be taking care of your children's children. You'll be taking care of your community, which is important. It is important. Of course, older women cannot physically lift heavy boxes, but they can emotionally guide people, which is very, very important. Which is a very huge role in society, I believe. And if you think about it, I mean that makes sense. And so I was talking about power. And the way women can fend for resources, like by themselves, with both men and women, is the way they're able to speak, with the way they're able to communicate, and they're like snakes. They have their own venom. Let's take social media, especially for women. Social media, of course, everyone knows is a very sexualized place. It's also a place where there's a lot of confusion between like to be chaste, which means to cover up, or to promote one's body as a female. And so there in one of the books I read, there's the biggest conversation amongst like girls who post or girls who interact as in school groups is like, oh, it is so like if you're ugly, right? No one talks to you. Like no one cares unless they're just trying to unless they're like super mean, they want to make fun of you. But if you are like extremely attractive, or if you are not even extremely attractive, but you have attention of boys, other girls, as a majority, will speak behind their backs about you, or even directly to you, calling you derogatory names like, oh, you're the type of person to sleep around with everyone, no matter who they are. And that hurts a woman's pride, because like society, socially, it's like, oh, if you're not a virgin, then you're like ruined. And in everyone's heart of hearts, like the purest desire is to like only share that sexual embrace with someone special. But of course, like the moment you lose that, it's like, oh, it doesn't matter. But like still, it kind of hurts, and you have to like do some healing over that in oneself. But that's very difficult. But I have a theory that's like the women will come after each other like that because this one girl is taking away the sexual opportunity of all the other girls in like the in group, or like the social group, which is like school or like high school. If this one girl is known to be sleeping with like even one guy, even if they've only done it once, like they're a whore because they've taken away the sexual opportunity of like other girls, and that's like, oh, that's taboo, that's bad, like you're like bad. But in themselves they're like, dang, she actually did that, like yo, I should be doing that. Or like yo, because think about it, right? If a girl specifically doesn't really like genuinely in her heart of hearts does not want to do such things, why would she make fun of that situation? They'd just be like, oh, that's an interesting story, let's move away from this person. Or let's like, I don't know, probably like they'd probably retract from interacting with them, or they just probably be like pretend nothing happened. But they wouldn't like go out of their way to make fun of said horror. But they do. And then social media is so bad too, like, but this was like back in 2006. In my own experiences, especially with my sister having a social media account, it's it revolves around sex, but it's becoming less and less like there's more layers removed from the core of like the venom that like for example, right? My sister will make a social media post, and let's say there's 6 images of her. Women who don't like her will find the picture in which she looks the least appealing physically and repost that on their own account in the form of like a 24-hour story on Instagram. And they'll be like, oh, Victoria posted, and then it'll be like the worst picture she posted. And that's like, it's that's how women fight. You know, if a bro and I have a disagreement, I'll go to his house and I'm like sock him in the chin. If a girl have a disagreement, it's emotional. It's like being like a collar around your neck, dragged through the mud publicly, or even if it is privately, it's emotionally toiling. And that's the way women fight to stop behaviors. It's essentially punishment. The point of punishment is to stop behaviors, to suggest a different form of behavior. If you don't like someone doing something, this is not something I'm a big fan of in terms of like a family relation dynamic, but you punish them and they stop doing the thing. 1984, 84, right? Yes. Rats. So, absolutely brutal. But this is the way women fight with their words, with like, and this like over resources. Even in terms of like, I remember when I was deciding to choose a college, and long story short, there was a scholarship opportunity that if they won, you get the scholarship. And so one person had to be a speaker. So there would be like a team of maybe 15 people, and there's only supposed to be one speaker, but three girls. And when I said I wanted to be a speaker, especially like as a male, and these were all three white girls. Like this is not a video about like racism, but like just think about just bear that in mind. As soon as I said I wanted to be a speaker, three other white girls forced me to stand side by side with them in the video. Like, this is the way females compete. It's literally they fight. And of course, if it was a guy, I think a guy would either be above competing at that such a petty level, or they would try to find a way to convince me to give the position to them. Like they would like compete with me, like, oh yeah, you think you're such a good competitor, then let me show you that I can speak better, and then they'd prove it to me, and then I'd be like, okay, sure. But they were able to control the group where they got me to stand next to like where there was only supposed to be one speaker. I mean, at that point I probably should have just not spoken, but it is what it is. I wanted to try to get the scholarship. I don't think that's the best example, but if you think about your own experiences and how women can be, especially when they are feeling agitated, or if they mean to attack, it's strange, right? But the status that a woman gets having a boyfriend, especially the most attractive boy in school, or like I've heard this said so many times, but adult life is just like high school again, where you enter a new field, and there's already the social groups figured out. There's already like the popular kids, the nerds, and you just have to integrate yourself into that environment. You're either a winner or you're either like a peasant, pretty much. And all of these dynamics that play out with women, with boys, with social groups, with intelligence, it's like status games. Like, my point is that they're played differently between men and women. And females, they will twist you. They'll twist you up. Of course, it's like people know that. Like it's like a joke in cartoons at this point, where it's like women can say the most meanest things, but that's how they fight. That's how they've evolutionarily adapted to like slap away all the girls who's going after this alpha chad and herself be the winner. And that's why, as a man, when you are pursuing a girl, how special does it feel when you could have had girls A through Y, but this guy chose her? How special she would feel to be privileged with being like your wife. Of course, you'd have to be desired by her in the first place, but like being someone who she desires, and especially if she knows that you're desired by other women. This is an interesting thing that I found. When you don't have a girlfriend, you can be overlooked by pretty much every girl. When you do have a girlfriend, people will look at you and say, what does she see in him? Maybe he's got something that I should be looking out for. Whether it's, at a young age, let's say if you're 16, like he might have a car, which is rare. When you're 35, like everyone has a car, everyone has a house. When you're 35, and especially with women who are financially successful, they'll be looking for not like financial security, but that love to be seen and step in. And that's something that men have not developed, as not a fault of their own, but again, the lack of education. It's actually a very cool thing, a cool point to make, that people say, I want to go back to the 1950s when women didn't, they didn't have jobs, or like they didn't have this or that, where they just stayed at home, they cooked and they cleaned and they did everything for the family. And it was so much better back then. But women having jobs today, and I'm not saying this out of like bitterness, I'm not saying this out of like, oh, I'm not able to attract someone who doesn't work. I'm saying this out of like pure excitement that, let's say a woman had extremely beautiful, but she has like an incredible career, and then you go up to this person, you you date with them or whatever, and then she agrees to marry you. How great is that? Where she could have had a fantastic life on her own. I mean, women, I'm sorry to say, but they're not really interested in like this sexual embrace when it really doesn't matter. Like they'll become perfectly content with their girlfriends, with their like trips to Cape Town or whatever, with their like $4 million villa in New York. They have like a very good life, and you are able to come in and say, I can offer you something that you don't have, that you want. Like, how fulfilling is that? How cool is that? Another point I want to go off the back of that is I'll say it now so I don't forget, but it is slightly in a different topic. I'm very grateful that women are in universities, schools, workplaces. I think it's such a great opportunity at the time we live in, where girls are all around us to inspire us. Oh, let me clap for that. That girls are all around us to, like, we get to live alongside of them. If you like, for me, when I think back to only like 400 years ago, men went to like for most of human history, when men went to colleges with other men, like men studied alongside other men. And it's only until recently that women have the opportunities to be in those co-ed spaces and to like have the same challenge as men, like side by side, where you could be sitting down in class every day and have faced the same challenges as a female. And like, I want to mention this because it was one of the ideas from a book where men, it was like one of the counter arguments that the book had is that men don't believe that there's enough inspiration or like female energy in the world. And female energy doesn't just come from women. They can also come from like a dog. Like a dog it just radiates female energy. They're submissive, they listen, they're cute, they're fluffy, they're soft, they don't like bite. Like this is like, and also in the same vein, alcohol is also female. They're attractive. They make you like chillax. Like alcohol just has this nature of like feminine energy. And the amount of inspiration we can take when you breathe in nature, which is feminine, when you breathe in like, and I'm not saying this in a weird way, like when you're surrounded by women, you have like the radiance of young women around you, where you can take that in, be fueled and energized. Incels would be bitter. They said, oh, I can't sleep with that woman, I feel so bad about myself. But you have the opportunity to look around at like the world we live in and to be excited. Like I could go up and like have a conversation with her about class, or about what do you think is the third. I actually did this today. A friend and I were at the gym, and this girl was walking by, and I just asked my friend, what do you think is the third best college in Texas? So I asked this girl as she was walking by, hey, can I ask you a question? What do you think is a better college, Texas A&M or Baylor? and we had like a good like 2 minute conversation. Like, I actually don't know. Like, I don't really like A&M because I think all those like the white jerks who were there are so cocky. And she's like expressing like her full emotions on this. I'm like, oh dang, I had no idea A&M's like that. I mean, I kind of did like I know A&M's kind of cultist, but like I told her how I didn't like Baylor because of my experience. I told you just now, and it's so like lively. Like you enter a interaction with a girl like with that good energy where you like the reason so many women are weirded out by men today is because they know men only want one thing. It's that meme, men only want one thing, and it's like so like their hearts are kind of hurt from that. But you can be you as a human, and keep in mind these are humans too. How amazing is that women are humans too, where you just talk about like you're surrounded, and of course there's a polarity. They're not a man, they're a woman, and so you feel excited by talking with them. But you can take that energy in, let it fuel you, and you get to put it out into your work. You get to put it out into your hobbies. You get to put it out into the things that matter to you, like energy wise. It's such a great opportunity that women get to live the same lives we do, side by side. And of course, you can marry them too, but like, that's up to you. I mean, personally, one of the questions I'm going to ask someone is that if their husband were to suddenly become very successful, would they have the emotional resources to leave their job in favor of a job that makes less money? And the reason I would ask this question is because as a mother, you only have so much energy in a day. And if you're spending even 50% of that energy to your work, which is just as demanding as the work I do, how can I expect you to come home and put in your like put like I don't want to put that on. That's like too much for a human, I think. And that's what leads to bitterness. Like I said, you could have the most amazing person as your wife, but if they're not interested in you, if their interest level is below 51%, if their energy is being sapped up during the day and they have to come home at night and then again, like, make dinner, teach the kids, or like, learn algebra for them. It's like, why, bro? Like, why, So this is like, it sucks. That part really sucks, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to make sure that my, that person would be up like or down, for the potential life where she doesn't have to work like that. Of course, I'll let her knit. Proverbs 31 says, "The honorable wife is regarded at the townsgate, and all the community knows her. She goes out and she buys land for the family. She invests the money. She'll do side hustles, whatever. But her heart is so full. She does that in love, not out of hate for the boss, or not out of like, oh, I this position I'm in at work, I'm not happy in my position, I want to be promoted, or like, these are masculine energies that's pervading into the woman's life, where I want her to be in her feminine. And of course, a strong man can put her in her feminine, but why would you want to work that hard? When a woman is at work and she has to grind, when she has to work like her father, she'll come home and she will be in that masculine energy. And some women will be so deep into that where you won't be able to pull them out. You won't be able to let them just be a girl. And what does being a girl mean for them? It means like letting them yap. You as a romantic partner, listening to them, understanding their feelings about it. Take swinging her up, holding her like a cat, and then like dancing her around the hallway. Being like that magical Prince Charming for her, and that puts her into that little giggly girl. Girls just want to have fun. It's another core value, which luckily they made into a song. How great is that? Anyway, I was speaking about women in jobs and women in society. And so, of course, financially, the status of like both a man and a woman working, you can get money, but honestly, an even greater status is when the man is so wealthy where the woman doesn't have to work, like a job she doesn't like. A job, that's the key here, the job she doesn't like. If she wants to work a job that she fully enjoys, I'm 100% behind that. If that doesn't take away her mental resources, if that doesn't take away too much of her time. And of course, like, when I think at least the kind of woman that I'd want to be around, um, where if she has kids, I, I think that is her new main priority in life. Of course, mine too as a father, but it's different for a mother. It is different for a mother. You see it in nature, where, of course, the father delivers the seed for the child, but the mother rears the children. And like biblically, if like it's the father and mother, like it's both the unit as a parental unit, the father demonstrates how to be a man. The woman demonstrates how to be a mother. Like if I had a daughter and there was no mother, like what would I know about women's underwear, or what would I know about, like, of course I'm a doctor, I know about the science behind a period, but like it's different when a mother leads her daughter through that process of that the entering of womanhood and what that means for her sexuality. Simply being a man, I can't do that for my daughter. Like it's so simple. That's just not possible that way. Sexuality is an interesting thing. I think there's a couple points I wrote about it, but there is something that I really want to make clear about sex. And man, I love this topic. Of course, I love women, but anyway, the female body was created by God to be beautiful. You see, like, how are children supposed to come on earth? Like, we're supposed to pray, oh God, please can I have children, like, and then you trip, fall, and land inside of a woman, and then have the sexual embrace just by accident. Like, there is attraction on both ends, and for men, just like that physical attraction, the most beautiful thing in the world. And like going back to female inspiration, like artists look to the female body as one of the biggest sources of inspiration in life. The female body. Just think of all the Greek statues. Just think of all the paintings. Even today, just think of all the Twitter artists. The female body, and most of those Twitter artists, by the way, they're not girls. They're guys. I guarantee you. Like the artist you're thinking of right now, he's a guy. He's definitely a guy. It's so beautiful, and this is intentionally built by God for you to enjoy, of course, for the purpose of reproduction, but also like in the sanctity of marriage for you to like. And if you read the Song of Solomon, if you read that Song of Solomon, where like chapter 7 or chapter 8, they describe the breasts as grapes or melons or something like that, and then I reach up and grab the melons. It's like it is inherently, and this is a clear message. God wants you to enjoy that. And of course, it's a bit taboo to talk about. I was telling my friend, like, when you in a Catholic school, like let's say it's an all-girl Catholic school, you press down on the fact modesty is so important. Modesty is so important. You are not to engage in extramarital sexual relationships, and everyone knows, like, these girls are like crazy. They're like whacked out the wazoo. Like they'll come out as like all the rainbow colors, and they'll like they'll be freaky and like with the other girls, and like the she's like, oh my gosh, because like you're pressuring and you're forcing them down into these rule books. But like if you show them the love in the pure intentionality of what God created for sexuality, for marriage, just imagine like this clean sheet of paper. And I love this analogy from Theology of Body. This piece of paper is like your sexuality. And let's say you share it with someone who's not your wife. You kind of crumple this sheet of paper. And then, you end the relationship, you heal yourself, you try to smooth out the paper, but like it's still crumpled, right? And of course, the more people you sleep with, like the more crumpled it gets. Like Hamza had this example with tape. You stick the tape once, it's very sticky. It's very sticky. Everyone remembers their first time. But if you peel it back off, this gets less sticky and less sticky. And then I guess like it's sad, but your heart can kind of harden. And you've done it so many times, you've unstuck. Yeah, so it's like my mom said, like, imagine you have a plate of curry, and then you give some curry to this one girl, and then that relationship turns out to be not the one, and you have limited curry left to give to the next person in your life. And then, like, of course, the longer you stay, the more curry, like, the more, like, it's such a heartbreaking thing. And of course, God can forgive you for such things, but and I don't mean to be elitist in any sort of sense, but it's so sad. Like, it's not the same, because you and of course, to a spouse, like, if you've slept with multiple people but your spouse is virgin, this it's like the unfairness to them because they waited, so why didn't you wait? It's yeah, it takes a very, very loving sort of like people to get over that barrier, but of course, once you do, it's up to them to make a good marriage. But what the devil does, the devil cannot actually create anything. The devil takes what God says and distorts it. Just like in the first story of the Bible, where the devil shows up and said, did God really say you can't eat from this? Did God really say that you die? If you eat this, you'll gain the knowledge of good and evil. How great is that? That's what the devil does with everything, including sexuality. He'll take the female body, which is something to be respected in dignity and love, and then turn it into an art piece meant for the male gaze, for lust, for in essentially treating the image, not even just the image, the person, as a meat bag. A meat bag to objectify. That it's like, that's not only sin, but that's terrible. That's like just utterly so sad. But this is like, this is what pornography is. And it's so sad. But of course, women being the most beautiful things on the planet, of course Satan would go after this. And of course, it's so pervasive in our culture today, how, young teenage girls struggle with this, making themselves look like the high best appearance to like zip the zipper down a little bit more, or to make the dress a little bit tighter, or make sure their skin is smooth. It's absolutely brutal. But I want to talk about this interesting book I read, directed to young females, about modesty. It starts off with, young girls at the beach, like ages 18. They're beautiful. They've got their bikinis on. They know that like all the guys are looking at them, and they're Christian. They're like, you are displaying your ability as a female to hypnotize men with your beauty that God has given you, with your heavenly curves, literally heavenly curves, and you're like kind of just like flaunting it as if it doesn't mean anything. Like you're showing your like holy secret to every guy. Wouldn't you want to show that secret to your husband, who loves you, your husband who could have had any other girl he wanted? He chose you, and how special would it be to him that he is the only person who knows that beautiful secret. That's what this book pretty much says. And it's tough for girls to kind of like to wait for the second marshmallow. They're like, okay, now I'm gonna cover her up, to be honest. And it goes through all of like the biblical examples of women from a different book. It kind of talks about the ability of women to seduce, and not in a bad way. Seduction is a technique used to convince someone. I could seduce a man with the money. Just read the John Green book on it, right? But women with their beauty can seduce their husbands into doing the right thing, which is what Ruth does in the Bible. In a quick recap, Naomi is Ruth's mother-in-law, and Ruth's husband dies. And Naomi and Ruth travel to this new city where they're pretty much both widows at this point. And Ruth, being not exactly, young, but she's still beautiful. She has, it's time for her to remarry, to have kids. Because she's actually had kids with her dead husband, but her kids died too, which is so sad. But it was time for her to have, more children. And there was like this handsome Chad, older man who was like a farmer, and he's rich. And his name was Boaz. And Naomi said, go after him. When at a celebration, make sure after he's had lots to drink, when he's sleepy and tired, he goes to like this little stack of hay to sleep, just wear a knockout dress, wear the nice perfume, and then take off your sandals and just lie next to him on the bed. And she does that. It's crazy. I mean, the Bible doesn't say anything about like them like having sex, but I don't think they did. She was simply just seducing him. And Boaz said, thank you. I don't remember what exactly happened, but Boaz did end up marrying her. And then when the time was right, they had children. And the Bible actually mentions that he had to go do something first. And then once the council said, oh yeah, you bought the land, you can, alongside with that land, you can, marry the woman who's living on that land. And then, Ruth nicely, became the wife of this very rich guy. This is the power of women. On the flip side of that, I've heard of like women using their bodies as bargaining power with men. And when men like don't fold under the opportunity to have sexual relations with a woman, and the woman's like, oh shoot, wait, so he doesn't like my body, like what else do I have left? And that there's like empty, they don't have anything left. This is like it points to the soul, and this is something I think is written in First Peter, when the Bible talks about wives. Wives are not only to take care of their external beauty, but their internal beauty as well. And that internal beauty is, of course, as a meme sense, personality, but to be a good wife, to be that diamond. Because the Bible says a good wife is rarer and more precious than rubies and diamonds. I want to continue this conversation and especially around women in a different time, because there's still so many things I'm learning, and there's no way I could fit everything I know about honestly, this hour I've only really scratched so many topics that I feel like are super important that I've been thinking about, but there's still so much more. But here's the question that got me interested in all of this. When I went to Scotland last year in 2023, we went to this cathedral, beautiful cathedral, and for the sermon, the priest came up and she spoke, and it was an incredible sermon. In fact, the sermon was so good, I've actually made a YouTube video about it on this channel. I'll link it right here. But it got me thinking, it is not usual for women to be in a place of power, especially within the church. So what is the role of women being in power in general today? It's so difficult. Because again, we see people like Deborah. And Deborah's mentioned all the time. Oh, she's the only person who was a prophetess and a judge. The only other person in the Bible who was that was Samuel. And other people in power. Women are human beings. But I think it just takes an exceptionally different kind of woman to be in that place of power. And I'm not restricting her ability to pursue that or to be that in any means. Like, I think, like I said before, where women are in places of, like, studying medicine, where you can sit side by side with a woman, like, we are in an age where that is a thing now. And whether you like it or not, that is how the world operates. And still the world turns. But at some point, if a woman is going after these sorts of things, since I think the approach here is, instead of like saying it's bad or saying it's wrong, or oh you girl, you have like muscles, oh that looks so ugly, like what's the point, bro? They've done it. They live in a society where this is a thing now. The answer, well, at least in my opinion, is just to let them behave like men. The absolute sacrifice to be a woman, but to sacrifice the identity of female, of girl, I sacrifice your feminine to know whether you're appointed by God, or whether it's your hobby, or whether it's your calling. To be someone who is masculine as a girl, they're sacrificing so much for something. And for you to just insult them or to demean them, it's not constructive anyway. They will chase it regardless. And you may not support it. I don't know if even that woman at the cathedral went up there and gave a fantastic sermon, and I'm sure that she has a good authority over that church. And of course, don't come in and say, oh, she has to be a female because all the male priestesses do bad things to little boys. It's funny, but it's not helpful to the conversation either. That's actually depowering her status as a female priest, and saying, oh, they only wanted a female because the male ones are bad. That lowers her status or her achievement in that sense. Just like technology, social norms and social beliefs are evolving ever so quick. So the battery just went out. I hope that the rest of that video was there, but I'm just going to end it really quickly. Enjoy this picture, this painting I made, and then thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good evening. It's a mystery. Still so many things are a mystery to me. I'm flipping through all my notes right now. I'm a bit scared to honestly, because I hope I did. Oh yeah, I already missed a couple things, but I got what I wanted to say out there. So thank you for watching, and here's to a fantastic 2025 year. Goodbye.